Welcome to the program. I'm Lyndall Curtis. The government has already effectively moved on from the current Senate and is setting its eyes on the new one, which begins sitting in July. Today, the government reintroduced the legislation to abolish the carbon tax in time for it to be in place for the first fortnight of the new Senate. It also plans to have the legislation to abolish the mining tax ready for that fortnight as well. So it was back to the future for MPs, an echo of a time when it was all about carbon.
It's high time that this business and so many businesses like it right around Australia were liberated from this toxic tax.
The Australian people voted to repeal a carbon tax which isn't fair, which is hitting families, hitting small businesses and isn't working. That's the fundamental thing.
Tony Abbott for 4 years has tried to be a one-trick pony, and its break glass moment keeps coming round where he just wants to go back to carbon.
Protecting polluters is Tony Abbott's mantra, and what he's going to do this week is continue to do that and say he wants to take millions of dollars, billions in fact, out of the pockets of the taxpayer and pay the big polluters.
So I hope and I expect, but I don't presume, that the new Senate will support the will of the Australian people.
We're still considering a lot of those issues, and there's work being done on that today and tomorrow. We hope to come to a final position on Wednesday evening.
It will be dealt with by the Senate urgently after the 1st of July, and I expect this toxic tax to be gone.
A short time ago, the Prime Minister introduced the suite of bills to repeal the carbon tax into the House of Representatives. And given he was doing what he did for the first time in November, he gave almost the same speech, although with a little more detail this time about the direct action policy that will replace the carbon tax.
We believe, Mr Deputy Speaker, that by the time the 5% reduction kicks in 2020, we'll have an overall reduction in our emissions of some 22% off 2000 levels of business as usual. And this is serious action about a significant problem. Mr Deputy Speaker, the carbon tax is a $9 billion hit on our economy this year alone. It's a $9 billion hit on jobs, a $9 billion burden on investment and a $9 billion burden on Australians that we just don't need. This bill gets rid of it. This bill, Madam Speaker, is the government's bill to reduce the Australian people's bill, so I commend the bill to a House and I move that this bill be read a second time.
The carbon tax isn't the only element of climate policy. The government's also reviewing the renewable energy target, something introduced by the Howard government and increased by the Rudd government. The once bipartisan commitment to the 20% target is no longer, and some are questioning the worth of the target altogether. Kelly O'Dwyer is a Victorian Liberal MP and she's written in the Financial Review this morning about the RET. She joins me now. Kelly O'Dwyer, welcome to Capitol Hill.
Lovely to be with you, Lyndall.
If I could start first with the carbon tax repeal, the same bills were introduced. It was largely the same speech from Tony Abbott. Why do you think you'll get a different result with the new Senate?
Well, we're hoping that Labor are going to come to their senses, that Labor are going to accept the mandate that we were given at the last election to stop putting costs on business, to stop destroying jobs.
But if Labor doesn't, you're reliant on 6 of 8 minor parties and independents. Are you confident at this stage you'll get those 6 votes you need in the new Senate?
Well, we're confident that people will see sense, that it doesn't make sense for households to be spending typically more than $550 on the carbon tax each year, and that it doesn't make sense, for instance, for hospitals such as hospitals in my electorate, not-for-profit hospitals, who are spending around about $700,000 a year on the carbon tax when they should be focused on helping and healing people.
If we could move on to the renewable energy target, what's wrong with it?
Well, look, what I've actually written today is that we need to have a discussion about the renewable energy target. It's very timely that there is a review that's taking place at the moment, and that's been conducted by Dick Warburton, and that's something that the government said that we would do before the last election. The reason we're doing it is because, of course, the carbon tax isn't the only thing that's actually putting an impost on business and driving up energy costs for households and businesses alike, but also the renewable energy target is significantly increasing energy costs for those households and businesses.
In fact, I think you're probably underselling a little bit what you wrote in the Financial Review today, because you effectively described it as business welfare, as an entitlement, and almost came to the point of calling it rent-seeking.
Well, look, I do think that there are some significant concerns with the way that it is currently constructed. We saw the Rudd government dramatically increase the 2% target up to 20%, and then they made an assessment as to the gigawatt hours based on a false assumption. Already we know from the modelling that's been done that 20% target now, in practice, as legislated, is more like 27%, which means consumers are actually paying more for their energy.
If it is business welfare, if it is an entitlement, should it just be got rid of altogether, in your view?
Well, this is the debate I think we do have to have. We do need to look very closely at what is actually being achieved by the renewable energy target, whether or not we do want to particularly subsidise renewable energies. That's not to say that renewable energies aren't good. I think, like world peace, we all agree renewable energy is actually something that we want as part of our energy mix. But the question is, how much should the taxpayer be contributing to it? How much should we be slugging business for it? And ultimately, how much really should the electricity consumer be forced to pay for it?
I'll try this another way. Would it be better off if it was gone?
Well, look, obviously there is a review that's currently underway. I have substantial concerns. I'm not the only person in the coalition who has substantial concerns with the renewable energy target. This is the beginning.
Would those concerns be eased if it wasn't there anymore?
Well, this is a debate we're going to be having over the next couple of months when the review is actually handed down to government and we are able to look at all of the evidence that's been presented to the review. But on the face of it, I have very significant concerns with the renewable energy target as it's currently legislated today.
You said there are others in the coalition that have those concerns. Is it a sizable number in the coalition?
I think it's a very sizable number.
And is there a push behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes for it to go?
Well, I think there are a lot of people who are interested in looking at the facts, Lyndall, and getting all the facts on the table about what it is actually doing, how it's driving up prices, is something that is important as part of this debate. We know that there has been evidence that it's increasing costs for instance, New South Wales households by around about $107 a year, according to IPART. Depending on whether you look at the other analysis that's been done by the BCA, it's upwards of around about 3.9%, and for businesses much higher, upwards of to nearly 9.6%.
At a time when the country is looking at what the industries are of the future, doesn't it make some sense, though, to put some effort behind the renewables industry, which could provide jobs and new industries for Australia to continue in the future? After all, your government in the budget gave nearly $500 million to encouraging entrepreneurs. Isn't it the same sort of thing?
Well, there are lots of ways that you can encourage particular industries, and there are lots of measures that you can use to employ to do that, and tax breaks, for instance, is one of those particular measures. But let's just be very careful about the arguments we're constructing here. We heard for many years with the car industry that it was important that taxpayers continue to subsidise that industry almost ad infinitum because of the jobs that were associated with that industry. Of course, the jobs were not going to be sustainable forever, and we know that with industry changes as well, and with the end of those huge taxpayer subsidies, that those international car makers simply went overseas where they could get other subsidies.
But renewable energy, unlike the car industry, can't necessarily be produced offshore. I mean, the sun is here and the wind is here.
Well, there are lots of international providers in terms of renewable energy, so let's not make any mistake and think that they're all domestic. We want to encourage people to invest with confidence in Australia, that's for sure. There are some arguments around this broader issue to do with sovereign risk that we have to take into account, but we're looking at issues beyond 2030, and I think that we have to seriously ask ourselves exactly how much we're prepared to pay.
On that note, Kelly O'Dwyer, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.